In a small, tucked away town in the Midwest, something big was happening. The old courthouse, a building that had seen decades of community meetings and local debates, was buzzing like never before. Donald Trump had agreed to host a town hall there, a chance for everyday people to speak directly with the former president. Outside, the line stretched down the block. Farmers, teachers, small business owners, and even teenagers had shown up, eager to share their thoughts or just see the man in person. Inside, the room was simple but full of history. Wooden benches, faded American flags, and a podium at the front. The air felt heavy with both anticipation and nerves. Trump arrived in an understated SUV, skipping the usual grand entrance. When he stepped inside, people shifted in their seats. He wasn't the loud, commanding figure many expected. Instead, he looked focused, almost thoughtful. He greeted the room, said a few words about the importance of listening to the real heartbeat of America, and then opened the floor to questions. One by one, people stood up to share their stories. A farmer talked about how the drought was crushing his crops. A young teacher asked for better funding for schools. A nurse spoke passionately about the lack of health care in their rural community. Trump listened, taking notes on a pad in front of him. He nodded, occasionally responding with comments about how these were the issues he cared about most. Then came Margaret. She was an elderly woman, her hands trembling slightly as she stood. She held up a letter, its edges worn and yellowed. She explained it was written by her late husband, a World War II veteran. Before he passed, he'd written to the government about his benefits, but never heard back. Margaret didn't raise her voice or ask for pity. She simply asked, "Why do so many promises get made, but never kept?" The room went quiet. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see how Trump would respond. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He looked at Margaret, then down at the letter she was holding. Finally, he said, "That's something I'm going to personally look into." It wasn't a big, flashy answer, but it felt real. As the night went on, the stories kept coming. A young entrepreneur stood up to talk about trying to start a tech company in a town without reliable internet. Trump listened and offered some advice about small business loans and grants. But the most touching moment came near the end. A teenage boy raised his hand from the back of the room. He wasn't on the list to speak, but Trump called on him anyway. The boy nervously explained how his family had lost their home in a flood and how he almost had to quit school to help his parents rebuild their lives. Trump paused for a second, then said, "You've got more strength in you than most people I know, and I promise, stories like yours are what we need to keep fighting for." As the town hall wrapped up, there was a different energy in the room. People who had walked in skeptical or even frustrated seemed to leave with a sense of hope. Trump shook hands, exchanged a few more words with folks, and then headed back to his car. But the stories from that night stayed with him. They weren't just complaints or sound bites. They were real, raw pieces of the American experience. And for the people in that small town, the night wasn't about politics. It was about being heard and believing, even if just for a moment, that their voices could make a difference. Sometimes, the most powerful moments happen when people come together to share their stories. If this one touched you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories.